Hello, everyone. I'm back introducing a new feature that Wargame Simulator has that has been brought about by talking to some of the early alpha testers. The early alpha testers frequently mention that the number of options they have when building and starting a game is far fewer than it should be. And I'll give an example of this because this is a fair kind of feature they should be asking for. When I go into a game and I'm given the option of selecting objective layouts, terrain layouts, or deployment layouts. And by default, each one has three options. Kind of this, if we kind of look at what they make, there's a cross for your objectives and an X. For your terrain layouts, there is a really terrible kind of ruins system that was meant to mimic the Pariah Nexus layout, but just never made it there. It's not mirrored in any way. It's really just garbage. And then there's a forest layout where you have kind of 5 squares in the middle of the battlefield. And then there's one that has 4 squares and 2 barricades. Really not realistic layouts in any way. And that when a user wants to pre-select a layout to play on, which is common in Warhammer 40k, to play on one of the approved layouts that you would see in tournaments or otherwise, they just don't have access to those. There are ways to do it kind of with a custom deployment zone where you kind of draw out your deployment zones using a drawing system, but really that just doesn't. That's really inefficient when you're trying to map out an entire terrain structure that has 15 different layouts or 15 different pieces of terrain. It just takes time. And obviously people would like more options. So I built a system where players can build layouts and share those layouts with others. As I was doing this, I found this nifty little tool, tabletop.labrador.dev, which kind of shows a bunch of different map packs that have been released in the last few years, and terrain layouts that have been released in each of those map packs. Terrain layouts are usually, well, when map packs are combined, map packs, they're a series of rectangles. These rectangles may be 6 inches by 12 inches or 5 inches by 10 inches or 6 inches by 4 inches. But it's really just a series of rectangles that you place around the board in a specific pattern. And since I don't have all of these in the Wargame Simulator system, I'm here to provide an option for how players may build their own map packs and share them with other users easily. Just because 40k releases these frequently. Different tournaments may have different map packs, and it's hard for one developer like myself to kind of stay on top of all that. So I've kind of built a system where community members can easily build them and allow other users to find them if they've already been built or build their own. So in order to do that, you would go to your community games section. It's over here on the kind of left navigation menu, and you go to community layouts. This lists all the possible layouts you can subscribe to. Clicking on one will show you kind of what that is. Like here's a very standard kind of objective layout or the beginning work on a terrain layout. And we're just going to build one of these to kind of show how simple it is. And I'm going to select, we're going to just do this one because we're on it, terrain layout 6. And we're going to build a quick terrain layout and get it imported into a game just to kind of show how that works. So I'm going to go to create and then terrain layout. And I'm going to name this terrain layout 6. GW approved. I can give it a description. Sample terrain layout 6. Now, as I said, terrain in these usually come in these kind of like 3 sizes. And so I'm just going to quickly build these 2 pieces of terrain. It's a 12 by 6 rectangle, about 4 off from the midline and 4 down from the top. That's in inches. So I'm going to build that. I'm just going to add it. You can quickly add one here. I'm going to rotate it, bring it 4 down, and so it's right there is where it goes. I'm going to give this a name, terrain 1, and I'm going to save it. Similarly, I have to do another one of those, but it goes down and it is opposite. So right there and there. All right, we're going to save terrain layout excuse me, terrain piece 2. We're going to save that piece. And we're going to do another piece. Let's do these two 10x5s that they have in this layout. So we'll add a 10x5. We'll rotate it into the diagonal. And then we'll place it along the midline, 6 inches away. I think that's how it goes. Yeah, 6 inches away with the corner on the midline, 45-degree angle. And there that one is. So we'll name this terrain piece 3. And then I'm going to make one more. It also needs to rotate like that, except for it goes up. Goes about right here. There it goes. Okay. Now I'm not placing these perfectly. I could spend a little bit more time, but no one really wants me to spend 20 minutes building this one layout as an example. I'm going to save this piece as terrain piece 4. And this is just where I'm going to stop right now. I kind of the first 4 pieces of terrain on this layout as kind of the example that I'm giving. And now I can save this entire layout. And once I save this layout, it will appear in the kind of like community layouts page as a terrain type layout. I can click on it, kind of see this is what we built. And I can subscribe to it. Subscribing to it simply means that it's going to show in our terrain dropdown when we're starting and configuring a game. Okay, so I subscribe to that. I'm now going to look at my games. This sometimes takes 5 to 10 seconds for it to actually kind of populate. So we'll go in here, we'll check out our games. We can see, okay, it's not there yet. I'm just going to refresh, take another look. All right, so here are our options. Here's our terrain layout 6. Now if we add that, it'll add the pieces of terrain to their appropriate location. They are registered as things that will block line of sight. All these ones were. And we have that terrain layout into our game. But now for the sake of building something, maybe someone's building a custom battlefield for a scenario or a tutorial or for some narrative campaign element. And let's imagine in this system they are building they're building a castle. So I'm going to go to this, I'm going to build another community layout. I'm going to call this, I'm going to build a terrain layout, and this one we're going to call large castle. Now with our large castle, what we want, if we kind of look at this generic version of the map, let's say we want a castle that kind of is occupying one of the board edges. We want to build its walls so that a defender may have like kind of this like secure little space inside of walls. This is just an example. And in order to do that, we can't use these predefined things like we could, and we could slowly, build a wall by moving a bunch of them and kind of building a wall that way. But we can build custom elements. And I'll kind of show you how you build that right now. We're going to call this the castle walls. And we're going to add a point. Now we're going to add a point. And this, when you're adding custom elements this way, you add them one point at a time, and it shapes those points. Like it connects those points as pieces of terrain. And so we're going to add one point at, let's do this at 15, 0. We're going to add another one, which will go to 20, 0. Another one, which will have be at 20, 20. So now we have kind of this first inside element of our wall. We'll add another point, which will go from our X is going to be 40. Okay, to right there. And 20, we'll add another point, which is going to be 40 and 0. Now we're kind of coming down, and you'll see how as we add more points, how this piece of terrain is going to configure itself for our game. We'll add another one at 45, 0, and another one at 45, 25. See, now we have this wall, and now we're building the outside of the wall. Terrain pieces are just one continuous series of points right now. So I'll add one more point, which is going to be 2025, 2015, 25. And there we have this nice here. I realize I've been doing this entire thing with my camera here. I'm going to get rid of that, my face cam. And so you can see the kind of outline of this wall since we've built by defining a series of points that kind of connect and build this wall. I'm going to save that as a piece of terrain. And I'm just going to add one more piece of terrain kind of to demonstrate the features. This is going to be, we're going to call it the outpost. And it's just going to be a simple square. So we're going to just 35, 22, 35, 27, and 30, 27. All right. So here, as you can see in this kind of demonstration here, we have this square piece of terrain. Let's put it there, but let's say we wanted to rotate it. We would rotate a piece of custom terrain just like we do one of these standard pieces of terrain. And now we have an outpost. We're going to add that terrain piece. So this large castle terrain layout now has just two pieces of terrain, and it's just kind of castle walls. I'm going to save that layout. And as we did before, we're going to check out with that layout. I need to go to my community layouts. I need to actually subscribe to it. And now we'll go to our games. We'll go into our game. And we'll go over to our map. And this will populate with our custom ones here in a second. Here we have our large castle layout. And you can see when we add that, we have a castle. And we could, for example, place a unit inside that castle and see that it blocks line of sight to outside of it. Unless, of course, you are inside of the walls and then you can see out of it. But anyways, that is kind of how you would add custom terrain and kind of get kind of build scenario terrain or campaign terrain or Games Workshop approved layouts that you can use and test inside the Wargame simulator system. Now I do have a question for anybody who does watch this video. When I'm building a piece of terrain, and this is kind of a give me suggestions sort of question. As I build a piece of terrain, I'm just going to open up the terrain building menu. There should be a way to mark terrain with very obvious kind of attributes. In this case, I can mark it with obscuring or dense, but those are the only two I have. And besides that, I have keywords. But there's those of you out there that know a lot more about different games and a lot more about Warhammer 40K than myself. And I'd be interested in coming up with a standardized list of terrain features that would be easy to add to any piece of terrain. And even keywords that we might want to look for frequently as suggestions. But this is something like obscuring will block line of sight, dense cover will give increased armor saves. Maybe there's one for difficult terrain that reduces movement, and just kind of coming up with a standardized list of terrain attributes. And I'd love to hear suggestions. If you have any ideas, comment on the video or message me in Discord. I'd be more than willing to start adding more terrain attributes to this list. So when you build your terrain, you can have a piece of terrain that operates in a very specific way in the game. Instead of just being kind of like generic blocking line of sight like it currently does. So please give your suggestions. I'll be more than interested to hear about them, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much.